Greetings, film fanatics. Filmholmes here, and welcome to another rendition of Too Many Movies. Okay, so just this weekend, one of the most anticipated movie sequels of the year came out. And of course, I'm not talking about Civil War. I've already moved past that, saw it. It was awesome! But there's another one that I've been anticipating quite a bit, and a lot of people have had high hopes for ever since we knew that it was going to come out. That, of course, is X-Men Apocalypse. Now, the X-Men franchise has definitely had its highs and its lows. It started off fairly high, got really high, took a fucking nosedive, kinda went like this, and all of a sudden went up here, and then up here. So like I said, the expectations for X-Men Apocalypse have been really, really high. I've been excited for it ever since I saw Days of Future Past, and when it was announced it was going to be Apocalypse, I was ecstatic, as most X-Men fans were. Unfortunately, the reviews for it, the critics' reviews for it, have not really been that good. Currently, I believe it's at a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, it's been out a couple days, so the audience rating is also out, and that's been a 74. So definitely, a little bit of a mismatch when it comes to critics and audience. I personally have not seen it yet. I hope to see it within the next couple days, and I promise I will put my review out for it. But until then, I decided to put out this video, about my thoughts and short reviews about all the other X-Men movies. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm leaving out X-Men Origins Wolverine and the Wolverine. Not because I don't count them as X-Men movies, I do. But in terms of the timeline with all the X-Men movies, you could take the two out and you wouldn't be missing very much. Plus, I heard they're making a third Wolverine movie. When that one comes out, I promise I'll review the other two. Also, another reason is I've never seen either one of them. I own both. I just haven't had the time to watch them. So yeah, a lot of reasons. But for now, I'm going to talk about all the other X-Men movies. The original trilogy, and of course the last two, right before Apocalypse, which of course will make that a brand new X-Men trilogy. So let's go ahead and get this started with the very first X-Men movie, brilliantly titled X-Men. Now, when the first X-Men movie came out, I was very, very excited for it because it was a live-action version of a lot of my favorite characters. Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey, Professor X, Magneto. I was attached as a kid to the X-Men animated series, and I even have all 5 volumes in my TV show collection, which, by the way, there'll be a video up fairly soon showing that, and a brand new segment from Filmholmes called Too Much TV. But I'll get to that later. Now, I was attached to the animated series, and that was my only knowledge about X-Men. I haven't really read the comics. I've got a couple of the comic collections of X-Men called the Essential X-Men. I still haven't been able to read them yet. So all I knew was the animated series. That's where all my X-Men knowledge came from. And honestly, that's still where most of it comes from. But I was excited for the first movie. It looked really cool. It looked dark. It looked kind of funny. It looked dramatic. So I went back and I rewatched it, and when it first came out, I loved it. It was one of my favorite movies. As I got older, my appreciation for it kind of waned a little bit. Not that I thought it was bad. It has its own style, and at the time, people were not really taking comic book movies very seriously. It was one of the first good comic book movies that came from, some very, very popular comics. But when I rewatched it, it's a lot better than I remember. It's a little slow, but the cast is solid. The acting's really good. I mean, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, who would have guessed that would have been just a match made in heaven? It was perfect. Patrick Stewart as Professor X, perfect. Ian McKellen as Magneto, great. I love the entire cast. And of course there's Anna Paquin, who I still have a huge crush on as Rogue. She wasn't as cool as the Rogue from the animated series, which, how can you top that? But she did a good job. And the story did a good job of introducing who the X-Men were to audiences who may not really have understood it. They kept it simple, but they explained really everything of how the X-Men came together, what Xavier's School for the Gifted was all about, why Magneto and Professor X were at odds because of their ideals and beliefs when it came to how X-Men should be treated, how mutants should be treated. And I like the whole political, sorry, I'm forgetting the word. The political scenes, I'll just say that, in the movie, I enjoyed those. I enjoyed how X-Men was kind of created as a way, like, to where X-Men represented homosexuals back in the day. And I like that dynamic. And the movie, you can kind of see that, how they took that from the comics, because it is very, very similar. And I don't know, I always liked how it was created because of that. You know, people were treated differently just because they are different, but they're really not that different. Just don't push them around. They don't deserve to be treated badly just because they may be different from normal people. You know, just because someone's gay and you're not, just because someone has mutant powers and you don't. Actually, I think in real life we would envy X-Men, because I want some superpowers. Like, I don't want to be gay. I love gay people. I think they're awesome, but I don't want to be gay. I'm happy being straight, but just because I love women. But superpowers, yeah, I kind of want some superpowers. I really do. I'd like to shoot lasers out of my freaking eyeballs. Not really the claws out of the fist, but I'd like to control stuff with my mind or go invisible. Anyway, the movie itself holds up fairly well and was a great introduction to the movie series. The cast was fantastic. It is slow. It's not as entertaining as some of the other X-Men movies I will get to, but it was a lot better than I remember. I started to not like it as much, but it really is a great first movie in this series. And I do highly recommend it. If you haven't been introduced to the movies yet, I very much recommend the first X-Men movie. It's got a great climax to it with the X-Men and Magneto. Of course, Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, sexy as hell, but a great character who would eventually be portrayed by Jennifer Lawrence, also sexy as hell, as we all know. But the casting was great, the direction was great, the action scenes were pretty okay, they would get better in the sequels, but overall, a solid movie. And I will give it a 4 out of 5. I think it deserves it. Maybe a 3.5. So I know that the movie is a little divided. It got good ratings from critics, it got good ratings from audiences, but now that we've seen what great superhero movies can do, including the X-Men sequels, this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, because it's not super great, but it's not bad either. It's just pretty good. And nowadays, that doesn't really pass for a superhero movie. But enough about the first one. 4 out of 5 for the first X-Men. I still very much enjoy it. Not one that I would rewatch all the time. Actually, that one goes to its sequel. X2, XMen United. This is still, I think, one of the best superhero movies made, and it was the best X-Men movie made until a later one, but it's definitely still one of the top 2 X-Men movies ever made. They upgraded everything. The direction was better. The acting was still really good from the cast. The new characters they brought in, Nightcrawler, and all these other characters were fantastic. Great additions, and the characters, they felt like the X-Men characters. That's what I didn't say about the first X-Men. It felt like the X-Men characters, everybody. And this one was no exception. The story going into Wolverine's background was great. I learned that from the animated series. It was cool to see that on the big screen. And it's just a fun movie. It starts off really strong with an attack on the president and with the introduction of Nightcrawler, who was always one of my favorites from the TV series. And, you know, and the X-Men tracking him down. Of course, Magneto's still in his prison, and, you know, how he gets out is pretty ingenious. And it's very well paced, and the story with Jean Grey trying to control her Phoenix powers. And I was excited about the Phoenix because I remember the Phoenix sauna from the animated series. And it set up so much for the sequel, but also stood so well on its own, but it upped its game so much. Everything about it was just fantastic, and it's just so damn entertaining. It was one of the first superhero movies that made me stand up and take notice. Like, wow, if this is taken seriously, this can appeal to a wide audience, not just comic book fans. And I think this movie opened a lot of people's eyes, so I thank it for that. The script was very solid. There were funny moments, but not stupidly funny, and the dramatic moments were great. And the fight scenes got even better. They were better choreographed and better put together, better use of the powers, all that good stuff. So X2, XMen United, it's still one of my favorite superhero movies. It's gotten a little lower on the list because Marvel releases one every damn year, and most of them are awesome, but it's still my second favorite X-Men movie. I still feel the second best one in the series, and I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I almost want to give it a 5, but it's been a little while since I watched it, and my feelings may change a little bit. It's the one X-Men movie I've seen the most, to be honest. So I didn't want to go too high with it, but 4.5 I think is very fair. Definitely watch it. Like I said with the first one, these two, very, very solid. Unlike the next one. X3... The Last Stand. Thank baby Jesus that this was not the last stand for this series, because it looked like it was for a long time, because this movie blew it big time. Now, of course, Bryan Singer, who is responsible, thank God, for making the majority of these X-Men movies, or even producing, I think all of them he's probably produced, but he's the one who brought it to the main screen for the first time. It was his vision, and he's done a wonderful job. He left to go make Superman Returns. Probably not the best decision there, Bri. But X3 felt very rushed. It felt like they were trying to end the series, which I don't understand, because there was so much more money to be made. I remember people were very hyped for X3 to see how the questions were going to be answered at the end of X2, and what was going to go on with Jean Grey as the Phoenix, and what would happen between Magneto and Professor X, and why was this the last stand, and the trailer kind of pumped us all up, and there was going to be a cure for mutants. Okay, that's kind of weird, and maybe unnecessary, but okay, how are they going to deal with this? And it was just a massive shit. Now, I don't hate it as much as some people. I don't despise the movie, because at its core, it is entertaining, at least. Like, I could watch it on TV on a Sunday afternoon and not regret watching it, but as an X-Men fan and a fan of the first two movies, it's extremely disappointing. It's awful. It kind of feels like it's like you're having sex for a really long time, but there's no orgasm. And then you just feel like, well, okay, some of that was fun, but then what the hell was the point? Because it didn't lead up to anything. It was just a complete clusterfuck that didn't even have a fun ending. And there's so many inconsistencies and bad writing, and like I said, some parts of it are good. I don't hate it as much as other fans do, but I still don't like it. It's probably the worst in the X-Men series, and I know I haven't seen X-Men Origins yet, but like I said, I'm not talking about the Wolverine movies yet. When I saw it in the theater, I knew how bad it was. I didn't pull the wool over my eyes and try to convince myself. I knew it was bad. Upon future viewings, I figured out how bad it really was, and I was so happy that other people agreed with me. Definitely not the worst movie ever made, but if this was supposed to be an ending to this trilogy for these characters, for this cast, fuck that. And thank God the studio said the same thing and did continue it. Thank God. But I give X-Men 3 The Last Stand 2.5 out of 5. I can't give it a 3 because I don't like it. I can't say it all. There are good points to it. There are some good parts. But the script seemed rushed. The direction was fine. And the fight scenes were fine. But the build-ups from X2, like the fight scene between Iceman and I almost said the Human Torch. That's obviously not it. But the kid who can shoot fire. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry. That was built up so much. That was the fight I was most excited about, and it was stupid. They couldn't have thought of anything else. It was just lazy writing. Whoever wrote this did not know how to write a superhero movie, and he probably went to go work for DC. Maybe it was David S. Goyer. I don't know, but no, because it would have been a pretentious movie. It wouldn't have been, whatever. But it was such a letdown, and it was a slap in the face to fans, and the ending was a slap in the face, and they thought in the movie if they just kept killing everybody, it would mean something, and it didn't, because the characters died in stupid ways. And like, even the after credits thing just left me confused and pissed. And yeah, 2.5 out of 5. I own it, but only because I need to own everything, even the bad shit. For the most part, and I wanted to own it just to have it and watch it again, and I could do without it, but it was only a couple bucks. But 2.5 out of 5. Let's move on to the film that reinvigorated the X-Men series. X-Men First Class. Now, I didn't see this movie in theaters. When I heard about it, I saw it, I thought it looked fucking stupid. X3 had put such a bad taste in my mouth, and I don't think I was the only one. It was a lot of fans. It left a horrible taste in their mouth because it was just, we were promised chicken salad, and instead we got chicken shit. And I couldn't wash the chicken shit taste out of my mouth from X3 The Last Stand, so I didn't see First Class in theaters. I was done. I was done with the X-Men movies. I was just going to stick with the first two, especially 2, and I was fine. But after I saw it got such high ratings from critics and audiences, almost 90% apiece, and my friends finally convinced me, I bought it for a good price and I watched it. And not only did I really like it, I loved it. I loved the pacing, the new cast did great jobs, and I believe they were these characters. I believe Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique. I believe James McAvoy as Professor X. He's such an underrated actor. Michael Fassbender as Magneto, again. The kid who plays Beast did a great job. I don't know his name, I'm sorry. God, it was so well paced. It was never slow, even though the beginning part should be slow. And they did a great job at the beginning. It wasn't directed by Bryan Singer. I can't remember who the director is, but he did a wonderful job of this movie, wonderfully directed, and a very well put together script that matched the old movies and set up things for those movies, but also made it its own thing. It was a prequel, but it was a necessary one. And, it gives more story to Magneto and Professor X, how Charles got injured, how he became paralyzed, how Magneto maybe was a part of that, and their friendship and where it kind of went south. And the chemistry between McAvoy and Fassbender really holds this movie together, but the script, very good. The funny parts are funny, the dramatic parts are dramatic. I know I say that a lot, but it's good to see these movies, especially superhero movies, you have to balance the comedy and the drama very well. And X-Men movies are not supposed to be hilarious, it's not Marvel, but it fits. But the opening scene, to get back to the direction, the opening scene where they recreated the opening scene from X-Men, showing Magneto at not a concentration camp, but his parents are being taken in World War II. It looked almost identical to that scene. So they were still paying respect to the original movies. And then Kevin Bacon is the villain. I love Kevin Bacon. Who doesn't love Bacon? He does a great job as the villain. The new characters... it was all just so good, and I couldn't stop watching it. I remember I was going to only watch a little bit of it that night because it was late. I watched the whole damn thing. It was so good, it made me not tired at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the movie's like 2 hours long, so it's a long movie, but it flows well, it ends well. It gave me hope again for the series. And X-Men First Class, 4.5 out of 5. It is that good. It really is that good. And it made me excited for what the movie that was about to come out, which I'm going to go ahead and say is still the best X-Men movie made so far. X-Men Days of Future Past. This was a movie that was highly anticipated. The hype behind it was unreal. The trailers were great. And the Days of Future Past, it's one of the most famous stories from the X-Men comics, and people remember it from the animated series. That's how I knew about it. It was a two-parter on the animated series, and I remembered it. I remembered each episode. And I knew the movie would have to stray a little bit, but the changes they made, especially with Wolverine being the one to go back in time, it made sense for the film series. People can bitch all they want, but it made sense. And their most marketable character is Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. And who the hell doesn't want to see Hugh Jackman as Wolverine go back in time and meet not new characters, but the younger versions of the X-Men, James McAvoy is astounding in this movie. Especially the scenes on the plane with Magneto, it's emotional, and you believe him, his pain and his suffering, and it's much better acting than needed in a superhero movie. And the whole cast is like that, honestly, the whole cast is. They brought their A game, everybody did. But it doesn't let up from the beginning to the end. It's a long movie, but it's so good. It's so well paced, and everything is necessary, and it tells the story so well. It does justice to the Days of Future Past storyline. It really does. And it's entertaining as hell. It's a summer blockbuster, but it can make you think like some of the Marvel movies do. It came out at a time where Marvel was really starting to dominate the film landscape, and Days of Future Past, is better than a lot of the Marvel movies, to be honest. And like I said, it's the best X-Men movie made so far. It's my favorite X-Men movie. I've rewatched it almost as much as X2. I find it more entertaining than 2. It's just the story is so much fun, and it's the jokes when they happen are right on the money. It's very dramatic, and it makes you sad. And the ending. And I don't like to do spoilers on these, even with older movies, so I won't. But my roommate came home after seeing it. He saw it before me. And I said, don't tell me what happened, but this is the ending that I want. And he just said, okay. And when I saw it and I was waiting there with anticipation, I was so happy with the movie, and I got the ending that I wanted to. It made up for the sins of X-Men movies past. And I was so happy they did it, because it was a slap in the face to that film, but it deserved a slap in the face, and it corrected it, and it was so good, and it was such a great ending, and made you excited for a sequel already, and you got a sequel. But I got the ending. It never happens that I get the exact ending I wanted, but it was also the ending all fans wanted, as far as I know, and they did it, and it was kind of risky, but they did it. And I'm sure it's not a perfect movie by any means. I'm sure there are plenty of plot holes with the time travel thing, but the new characters, Quicksilver, was very well done. I wish he could have been the same Quicksilver in Avengers Age of Ultron, but obviously these are two separate Marvel universes. That's how I think about it, to make it make sense in my head, that it's two different universes. So it's two different Quicksilvers, completely different, and I'm fine with that. But the kid did a great job, and I look forward to seeing him in Apocalypse, because he was one of my favorite parts, and just it kept you on the edge of your seat until the end. You didn't come on, how is this going to end? How is this going to go? It didn't get boring, didn't get repetitive, and everyone's great. But it's like I said, I'm sure it's not perfect. I could pick it apart, I'm sure, but it's a 5 out of 5 for me. It really is. It's my favorite X-Men movie. It's a lot of people's favorite X-Men movie, and if you haven't seen it, see it. See X-Men First Class first. Yeah. And then Days of Future Past. But it's what the X-Men franchise needed. Alright, so that's my thoughts and my short reviews of all the X-Men movies. Yes, except for the Wolverine ones. I will get to those in a separate video eventually. I'll save those. And I am very, very excited for X-Men Apocalypse, even though the reviews have not been stellar. But critics are sometimes wrong, and sometimes a lot of critics are wrong, and sometimes these type of movies, they're made to where the fans will understand them more and find them more entertaining than the critics. Here's an example. I read a review of Deadpool, and Deadpool got wonderful reviews. It got the reviews it deserved from audiences and even from critics. And one reviewer gave it a very nasty review, and he said, the humor in this is juvenile, Deadpool is unlikable because he is basically a child. Okay, I've never read the Deadpool comics. I've recently attained some, but I still haven't read them. But I did some research before I saw the movie. I knew what the character was like. He breaks the fourth wall. He's a smartass. He's very sexual, which I wasn't shown in the movie, but there's a lot of different things. He knows he's in a comic book, but he is a fucking child as a superhero. And I just wanted to go, okay, well, if you didn't like the movie or find it funny, just say that you didn't get it. It wasn't for you. It wasn't made for you, which it wasn't. Fine. But don't start, throwing insults at it because you don't understand the original lore, what Deadpool is, why he's like that, why he's a smartass. You're an idiot for saying it's a bad movie, it's a bad film, because you don't get it. It wasn't made for you. And maybe X-Men Apocalypse is the same way, because the fan score is still pretty high. I think it's like a 74. So which is still lower than I thought it would be, but from what I've heard about it may suffer from some sequelitis that a lot of sequels do, but I'm still excited to see it, and I will put my thoughts on it in a separate video, hopefully very soon. Hopefully you enjoyed this. This was Too Many Movies with me, Filmholmes, and I got more movies to watch. I'll see you next time. Bye.